All right, we're going to start Chapter 6 in Bio 105. Chapter 6 deals with the skeletal system. So let's go ahead and take a look at, this is showing our entire skeleton there. Let's look at bone overview. So here we're going to look at functions of the skeletal system. So one, it provides us with structural support. So it provides a framework for the rest of the body to be a part of, right? Also, it does blood cell production. So blood cell production occurs in the red bone marrow, and it produces all types of blood cells. So red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So red blood cells transport oxygen in our blood. White blood cells are defensive cells, and platelets cause blood coagulation or blood clotting. So that red bone marrow fills internal cavities within the bone. Next is protection. So that's the next function of our bones, is that it protects internal organs and tissues. Next after that is mineral and lipid storage. So it's made primarily of calcium and phosphate. And so calcium is the most abundant mineral in the human body. We have 1 to 2 kilograms of it. That's equivalent to 2.5 to 4.5 pounds of calcium alone. Also within our bones is yellow bone marrow, and yellow bone marrow contains lipids or fats. The last function of bones is they are used for leverage. So they serve as levers for skeletal muscles. So when our skeletal muscles contract, that's going to move the bones, and so the levers make it easier to move a load. Okay, so let's look at the classification of bones. The adult human body has 206 bones in it. So we can group these 206 bones into 4 different categories. I'm going to throw in a 5th one here. So one group are called long bones, and this is showing a long bone here. Long bones are longer than they are wide. So bones of our arms, bones of our legs are long bones, so even our fingers are long bones. Next are short bones. This is showing a short bone right here. These are cube-like bones in their appearance. These are bones of our wrists and our ankles. This is showing one of our wrist bones. Next are flat bones. So this is showing a flat bone right there. So flat bones are plate-like bones. So, you know, they're thin and flat. So bones of our cranium or upper skull there, even ribs are flat bones. Lastly are irregular bones. And so irregular bones have a variety of shapes. And so this is showing the sphenoid bones, one of the bones of our skull. Our facial bones are irregular shaped. Our vertebrae, our backbones are irregular shaped. The last category I'm going to mention are sesamoid bones. So sesamoid bones are bones that are embedded within tendons. And so our patella or kneecap is an example of that. Okay, let's move on to looking at types of bone tissue. And so we have 2 types of bone tissue. When you just chop inside of a bone here, what you're going to see is you're going to have compact bone here on the edges of the bone, and then spongy bone on the inside. Now, compact bone is a type of bone that has a continuous matrix with no gaps. So you just see it's solid bone there. So a nice protective layer there. So compact bone is, so bone in general is primarily made of calcium phosphate, which is a mineral, so salt mineral, that has collagen in there. Now, the calcium phosphate is hard, but it can be brittle. And so by having collagen in there with our bone, it makes our bone less brittle. And so if we look at this next slide here, this is showing our one of our lower leg bones. This is the fibula. And you can do different chemical reactions here. You can remove the mineral out of it, and you can see this is all that's collagen is left, and it's kind of bendy. And you can do a different chemical reaction here and remove all of the collagen, and you can see the bone becomes very brittle. All right, so it's very important to have that collagen in there. Makes the bone less brittle. We just go back to this picture here. You can see that compact bone on the outside. And then on the inside, you see this very porous bone, and that is spongy bone. So this is a type of bone that is made of many bony branching plates. So these little bony branching plates. All right, so it's very porous, and it's there to lighten the bone. Instead of having solid bone all the way through, you know, the interior of the bone, and we can see here the interior of the bone, has a spongy bone. All right, and so red bone marrow resides within those small cavities. All right, well, let's look at if you were to break a bone. So this is after a fracture or a break. So, okay. So the first thing that's going to happen is hematoma formation. So here, blood vessels, so blood escapes from these ruptured blood vessels, what we see here, and this forms a hematoma. And so that's a mass of clotted blood. This area is inflamed and it's swollen. Next is fibrocartilage callus formation. So this is a fibrocartilage callus here. So here, blood vessels are going to grow into that area, and with that, they're going to bring phagocytic cells that are going to clean up the debris in that area. Okay? So next, fibroblasts and chondrocytes move into this area. Now, fibroblasts are going to make collagen fibers here, and the fibroblasts are going to make fibrocartilage. So it's another type of cartilage. We didn't talk about it in lab for this class, but that's what it gets made there, is fibrocartilage. All right? So that's going to hold the two ends of the bone together. Now, obviously, this is why we put casts on. If you put the two ends of the bone there, the fibrocartilage will form this way. If the bones are at an angle when they heal, they're going to stay at that angle. All right? Next is the bony callus formation. That's the next thing that we see here. So here, osteoblasts are going to convert that cartilage to spongy bone. All right? And this whole process takes about 2 months. But about 6 weeks in, you can take the cast off. There's enough bone in there to hold those two ends of the bone together. Lastly is bone remodeling. So what's going to happen here is that osteoblasts are going to fill in these spaces there on the edges of the bone, remaking compact bone there. And then if it's a flat bone, anything else but a long bone, you're pretty much done here. If it is a long bone, what you have to do is you have to remake the medullary cavity, that space within the diaphysis, or the middle portion of the long bone. So what happens here is osteoclasts break down that spongy bone, remaking that medullary cavity.